Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Chasing Collectibles Catchup. I'm Tyler, and recent episodes have been trying to expand, do some different stuff. And today we're continuing our conversation about vinyl collecting. And I invited Benji of Vinylbenjy to join us today. He runs an account that I started following last few months, and I've been really impressed with his collection. It's really cool. He posts a lot of really neat stuff and knows a lot of stuff about vinyls, and so I thought I'd invite him on. He was nice enough to accept the invitation. So Benji, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Tyler. I'm really excited to be hanging with you and talking about the thing I love the most.
Yeah, yeah, I'm hyped. I mean, I've seen your collection. I mean, not all of it, but I mean, it's amazing the little videos that you post, how many different things you have, how many copies of certain albums you have. I know with Brian Wilson's passing, you recently posted so many different releases of Pet Sounds that you had. It was really just cool to see what you have. So it's really awesome.
With that album and as Sergeant Pepper as well, which I have more copies of than Pet Sounds. It was never my intention when I started collecting to have so many copies of an album.
Right.
It just sort of became, I had a great copy, but I want to get a certain other copy.
Hmm.
Usually it started with me just wanting to get original copies
Right.
and along the way I would find other really interesting ones to have in my collection, and it just turned into me going crazy.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of when you first started collecting, I guess when did you first start, and what got you into buying vinyls?
It's an interesting story, actually. 16 years ago. Um, this is a story I've told many times at this point. I love telling it though.
Yeah.
It's not a story I don't get tired of much. 16 years ago, 2009, and Beatles remasters came out. Beatles Rock Band came out, and it was big. I was already really into the Beatles,
Hmm.
but I still had a lot to learn.
Right.
Uh, and I knew most of their songs by that point, even down to the not as well known album tracks, not as well known album tracks. But one thing I didn't know was that when Anthology came out in the mid 90s, Breeze Bird and Real Love had exclusive bonus tracks on their singles that were not on Anthology.
Hmm.
And to this day, they're not available for streaming and never were on iTunes. Some
Huh.
have been released since then, albeit with different mixes, but a bunch are still not. And I really wanted those extra bonus tracks. So with my dad's help, I went to Amazon, and this was before Prime existed, if I recall correctly. And I found a seller who had the Freezer Bird CD, and I bought it with my parents' help. And this was May 2nd, 2009. I couldn't tell you
Okay.
when it was delivered because, it was so long ago. The
Right.
only reason why I know when I ordered it was because, Amazon order history, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Eventually it arrived. I think it got shipped to my father's office, and I waited very patiently that day. I was eager and excited for my dad to come home from work with the package, and I opened it up. I got Freeze the Bird, but it was not the CD.
Hmm.
It was the record. This is
Nice.
this is the
So
this is the very
that's the copy from
that's the
2009.
copy. That's right. And at first I was a little annoyed, of course, but that grew into intrigue.
Hmm.
This format of music that my parents grew up with, that all my favorite music had been first released on. I never owned one before, and now I had one for myself. And so it turned to curiosity, and eventually it just kind of grew from there. It wasn't until about a year later, though, that for my 15th birthday next year, I got a turntable and
Nice.
speakers,
So you can
and
finally
a
start playing
receiver.
it.
Yeah, I only played it a few times in between then. My grandmother had a turntable, so I had to go when I went to her house, I would play it.
Yeah. Nice. That's an awesome origin story because it is cool, with these vinyls to see like this is the format, like you're saying that like a lot of these iconic songs, artists that we like, this is where they first came out on, our parents, grandparents, when they went to get their music, it wasn't on Spotify, it was in a record store.
And growing up, especially when I was growing up, when I was much younger, people were listening to CDs
Hmm.
like they would listen to records. But by the time I had my own iPod, The way I would get music onto an iPod was just to rip the CD onto my iTunes and then
Right.
put it on there. And that's kind of how that's sort of my relationship with CDs, and I still kind of see them that way. I haven't really. I do appreciate. I think it's great that people are starting to enjoy CDs as a listening platform. I'm sure they can sound great,
Yeah.
but to this day, I still can't help but see them as just this bridge between this way to just get them onto my iPod and my computer. So having this other format that I can just listen to right there and have it be a special moment
Yeah.
rather than just getting ready to be on the go.
Yeah.
It was really exciting. Still is exciting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've got, some question about this a little later on, but not to jump too much ahead. I think what's neat about vinyls is it does kind of make it like an event, I guess, in a way. You don't just like, you have to be sitting down. You have to be in a place where you can sit down and listen to. I mean, granted, you could be doing something while you're listening, but it's not like Spotify. It's not like a CD we could put it, in a Walkman, which is outdated. But you have to be sitting or near the area to appreciate the vinyl, which is kind of cool.
Well, the turntable I started with, it was a Sony. That was the first one I got. I don't use it anymore. It doesn't work well anymore. It's not a great turntable. At a certain point, it was time for me to upgrade. And thankfully, I didn't have to pay too much to upgrade. Well, it's also unfortunate too. My uncle passed away about 7 or 8 years ago, and he was also a very huge vinyl collector. And when he bought something, he did his research and got a very good product. So usually my main turntable is a Technics or Techniques. I still
Okay.
don't know how to say it. It's a SL 1600 Mark II, and it's a very good turntable, heavy but very good.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, right now it's in need of repairs. The RCA cables that are permanently attached to it, I've seen better days. I need to get those replaced. So right now I'm using this turntable, Stackstone. I got it for free, I think last year to do a video about, and for a portable turntable with a built-in speaker, it's actually quite good.
Nice.
And the reason why I'm telling you about this is because you may have seen this in my story a few days ago, or actually I have a post about it now, but I suddenly had the idea of just bringing it outside with me to listen to my records outside on my porch.
Oh, cool.
It was amazing,
That's a
because
nice
I
vibe. Yeah.
decide between uh, enjoying the beautiful summer weather or sitting cooped up in this bedroom.
Right.
And I figured I could just bring it outside, enjoy the music and the weather at the same time,
Yeah, that's awesome.
and awesome.
I think we've got a similar brand for the one we have at home. I've got so I actually, in my collection of vinyls, I'm a teacher, so I actually bring my vinyls with me to my classroom over during the school year, and I play my records for my students. So at my school, I've got just a basic, $50 one you can buy at Walmart. Nothing crazy, but because I don't want to, leave anything too expensive
Of
there.
course not. Hey, look,
Um,
kids do crazy things. I wouldn't
yeah,
want to bring a super expensive turntable either. I mean,
no,
there are certain times and places that are good for a cheap turntable, and I think
right.
that's
Yeah. Fortunately, they've all been very good about it. I tell them, day one, I'm like, there's not many things that can make me mad. If you mess with the turntable, that's going to make me mad. But they seem to appreciate it. So I try to, convert them, expose them to, the music that I like, and they seem to appreciate it. So,
well. What's been their favorite that you've played?
I'm trying to think of a few. I mean, I'll play them, the Beatles, I'll play Rolling Stones. They got really into, I have a Temptations album and they got really into that. They loved My Girl. They were all singing, actually singing along to it, which is awesome. I've had a couple of students who I'll play the Traveling Wilburys, and they'll like perk up, like, "Who's this?" I'm like, "Let me tell you who this is." You know. So I played some Bob Dylan. They're kind of hit or miss on Bob Dylan. They don't
Understandable.
they don't get it. They're not as red pilled as I am, I guess. But
And his
uh,
voice, one of the best songwriters, but doesn't exactly have the voice of an angel.
No, it's polarizing. He's not. I listened to a Bob Dylan podcast, and they described him as like a vocal performer, which is, I think, a good way to. He's not like Adele is objectively a better singer than he is,
Oh,
but
100%.
he gets the job done. Some people like him. I enjoy it, but no, they like him. They like the vinyls overall. So,
That's wonderful.
well,
I'm
what?
happy to hear it.
Yeah. Well, what are I know some of your favorite genres, I think, from following you, but just for the general audience, what are some of your favorite genres and artists?
Well, we'll say for those of you who do follow me, Vinylbenjy is not an act. This is not a persona. What I post about is stuff I really, really enjoy. So to those of you who know me already, you won't be surprised by any of this. My main genre is definitely classic rock, especially 60s. Beatles are my all-time favorite. The
Nice.
Beach Boys are probably my second favorite. And, mixed in there as well, I love, the Grateful Dead. They're more recent favorite. Simon and Garfunkel, The Who, The Stones, The Monkees, Springsteen. Oh, I love Springsteen. Uh, and bands like that.
Mhm.
That's what I'm into.
Nice. I've been on a Springsteen kick lately. I got the
Yeah.
collection that's like from 75 to 85 of
That's
his
one.
his
Oh, the
live.
live, I have that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a good because it's got, I mean, it's 5 discs and it exposes you to a good amount of, different albums that he was doing at the time. So I've enjoyed that one.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Springsteen because one of the records I kind of took out to maybe show you. It was one of the earliest records in my collection because when I got my turntable, my parents gave me all their old records that they still had, and my very first Springsteen record was my mom's copy of Born to Run, which is right
Oh,
here.
nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's
I
one
love
of
that. I love that album.
my favorite. I love the sound. It's not even original. There's a barcode on the back, but look, this is a copy my mom enjoyed growing up
Yeah, no, that's
more when
full
she was a
connection.
teenager in college. So it's meaningful to me in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned the barcode, and I actually messaged you about this the other day because I was finally trying. I was putting all my collection in Discogs, and one thing that's challenging because with comic books, they actually have like a code that pretty much tells you like this is when this is the number, this is if it's a reprint or not. With the vinyls, I discovered that it's tricky. It can be challenging to determine like is this an original release? Is this I mean, odds are you're not going to find an original release depending on what you're looking for. If I
Yes.
go to the store and I see Sergeant Pepper, that's probably not going to be an original release unless it's like put away somewhere. Um,
Yeah. And especially with vintage albums, older albums,
mhm,
and in America, there are lots of different pressing plants, and each pressing plant had slightly
mhm.
different label designs.
Yeah,
It, and it's sometimes hard to, that's why I told you to look at the matrix number. That's what I have to use
yeah,
too,
yeah.
because
That
sometimes
helped a
that,
lot. Yeah.
sometimes that is, that really narrows it down by a lot.
Hmm.
And it is a little annoying to have to take it out, try to get it in the right light, look at the
Yeah.
matrix, type it in. But it's it could be annoying. But thankfully, modern records are a little easier to catalog. Too
Right.
bad my collection is old records.
Yeah, yeah. Do you still do a good amount of like, re-releases? Like I know like if like the Beatles was it
Oh,
2 years ago in 2023, they did like the whole, 62 to 66 and 67. Did you
oh yeah.
yeah,
I have that release over there somewhere. And of course, that was when Now and Then came out. So, needless to say, around that month, I think a lot of money left my bank account.
yeah, yeah.
But I do have right here. Wait, where is it? Where'd it go? Oh, maybe it's in this box. I didn't take it out yet. You may recall this. I don't know if you'd seen this. It's pinned on my profile.
Mhm.
I was shared on the Beatles social media after Now and Then came out. It was a video that featured a whole bunch of other Beatles fans, but I was the thumbnail of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was incredible. It was a great
Yeah.
state to mail. I
Yeah.
still get giddy on it, but I did this whole video. I went to my local record store, Mr. Cheapo's, and I went to pick up these two copies that they had, the blue and the clear vinyl. The others I'd pre-ordered and they didn't come for a bit, and I was gonna wait till they came, but I realized, oh, wait a minute, I gotta have one ready for a video of some kind,
Yeah.
vinyl baby. People want to see that. And I did ultimately want all the varieties I can get. So I did the video, and when I got home from the record store that day, the 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 red and blue albums sweatshirt I ordered came, so I was able to put it on. I filmed the whole video, edited it that day, put it up, and it did very, very well. And then they put bits of that in that video that was shared by the Beatles page, and I was a thumbnail. And I think I was a thumbnail because everyone else was just fan reactions like, oh my God. And whereas I had the sweatshirt
Right.
and
Yeah.
vinyl, so I think it
Very on
made
brand.
sense from that aspect. But anyway, these are the two copies I was holding in that video.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
But yeah, yeah, I do get going back to what you were asking before. Yeah, I will frequently get reissues. Look, there's some I have to miss for if I don't want them enough or if money's tight. Like for example, I really would have loved to have gotten the Weezer Blue Album box set, but don't as much as I love that album, it just wasn't the box set wasn't call me enough as
Yeah.
others does. Yeah, yeah, I have to pick and choose sometimes. If I could, I get as much as I could.
Yeah. Well, you kind of touched on, you have your account, you've done videos and all that. So what kind of made you want to go from just, collecting vinyls to like kind of joining this community and sharing pictures and videos? Because it's a really impressive page.
Thank you
Um,
very much.
but like what made you decide to start sharing this?
It was back in 2016. I was in college, and I just had this idea. Oh, I'm just gonna share stories of my collection on my Instagram. But it didn't take it seriously. I posted once in a blue moon back then, and but it wasn't until the pandemic. Um, it's not like I started right at the beginning of the pandemic. The thing that had my attention for the first number of months during the pandemic was Animal Crossing. But
Yeah, many people. Yeah.
like most people, but I got really burnt out from it because I was playing it every day from when I didn't necessarily want to, and I haven't touched it since 2020, actually. I wonder how my villagers are doing. That's besides the point. But then, I started to, this other very good friend of mine, his account is Hits and Hops. His name is Tim. He's been one of my best friends since high school, and he started a page of his own, hits, which is like he pairs a beer with an album, and
Oh,
he was
that's
just
cool.
giving his page more of a go. So I decided to kind of join him and say, I'm going to put more effort into this page, and the thing was, it wasn't until around then that I met other vinyl community people.
Hmm.
Maybe met one or two in the past, but hadn't really realized there were other people like me. And the once I connected with the community and met other vinyl enthusiasts like myself, that's when it really starts to pick up, and I really started to put more effort into it and started posting practically every day. And from there, it just kind of took off. And it's been a slow and steady rise since then,
Yeah.
but hasn't really stopped rising since then. Overall.
No, I mean your stuff is, I've said this already, but I mean it's very cool. I mean, you've got a good way of like showing off your stuff and telling off the story, which is
Thank
really
you.
neat. Um, this is a question I kind of mentioned to Skylar, who we talked about earlier. Um, do you like how do you balance like I know there is a lot of work that goes into running an Instagram account because you got to make sure you post nearly daily on either on your story or like a post. Um, I mean, does it ever feel like work, or do you still kind of feel that okay, this is still something I enjoy, and I don't feel obligated to post. I mean, how do you balance that? Because I like
Well,
when we talked, she was like, I love the Beatles, but like, so I still have a job, and I gotta.
I mean, I must admit there will always be some days where it feels a little bit more exhausting and more like work. But I try not to. If I don't always feel like working on those days, then I won't. I only want to do it when I enjoy it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that's all I got. I lost my train of thought there, but
No, that's good. No, I mean that's
but
something
yeah,
that she.
I try to keep it an enjoyable experience because if it stops being enjoyable, then why would I keep doing it? I mean, that's why, as I mentioned before, Vinylbenjy is not a persona. I post about what I
Yeah.
feel like posting within reason, ultimately. But I post whatever I feel like posting, and that's what keeps it fun for me.
Hmm.
I mean, certainly, sometimes I do a video, it takes a few takes to get a line right,
Hmm.
and trying to keep the smile and the excitement on my face after a few tries of a line, that does get exhausting.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So sometimes I do have to exaggerate a little bit the excitement I'm feeling about a record, but usually it does. But usually it's still quite true to how I feel about it.
Right. Well, you talked a little bit about the community here. I think it was either today or yesterday. There was you did a vinyl exchange with someone, which is
Oh, with
pretty
Sky,
cool.
not with I mean with Lexi Sky.
Yeah.
Put on
So
my story because it was her birthday yesterday. Yeah.
so what's that like? That's pretty cool. How does that work? Because I think I've seen other people do that as well. You just,
That's fun.
talk to one another and be like, oh, here's part of what I like, and I think that's so cool because that's like really showing off the community aspect of all
Yeah, it's
this.
nice. It's not something I really go out of my way to do, though. Usually, if someone asks me, I'm usually open to it. It's
Mm.
fun to yeah, it's fun to connect with people. And I
Yeah,
must admit, it's sometimes hard to pick a record for my collection because there are plenty of records I don't want to give away.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's fun to collab with people, fun to team up, fun to work together, and it gives me one less video to have to think about ideas for.
right.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, exactly.
But I
Um,
do enjoy it, of course.
that's good.
And
No, it looks
Skylar
like a
gave
lot of
me,
fun.
I'm sorry, not Skylar. And Lexi gave me some good ones. Uh, she gave me, I mean, granted, she gave me Soft Cell, the album that Tainted Love was on, and she
Okay.
gave me her uh her old copy of what album? Oh, Jeff Buckley.
Okay,
It was
nice. That's good. Yeah.
meaningful because it was, I mean, her copy is beat up, like beat to
Mm,
hell, super incredibly beat. Like bits of the jacket stuck to it, incredibly scratched
mhm.
up. I'm hope she gives me more information on how it got that way. But on the other hand, and Hallelujah, the one song that's hard to play on that. But on the other hand, it was meaningful because it was so cool to have this record that meant so much to her. It's a nice
Yeah.
little interesting addition to my collection, and it's a nice story to tell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it shows that some of these, what's cool about the records that you get from certain people. I mean, it's got, a lot of times it's got meaning to it, whether, it may be damaged to the extent or like, have some scratches, but it's, you know, that's got a story that goes along with it. I've
Yeah.
got my grandmother passed away last year and she had a vinyl collection. There wasn't a lot of stuff that I would have liked, on it, to be honest. I mean, she had a Bob Dylan one. She had, some things here and there that I was able to get, but she was Polish and Catholic. And so she had a record of Pope John Paul II giving mass. And I was
Mm.
like, huh, I kept it. I haven't really played it just yet, but I'm like, you'll never find that anywhere. That's not going to sell for, it wouldn't sell. But I'm like, that's neat, So I kept that to remember her by.
Yeah, that's how, Vinylbenjy started that way. It started as me just trying to think of stories to tell of how I got a record and
Hmm.
maybe how the record means to me. And it's not always easy because some records I have are just random, it's not much interesting to tell. But the first few years of Vinylbenjy, I was either working from home or unemployed, so it was a lot easier to take time out of the day to make content and come up with elaborate video ideas and take time to make something incredible. But I do work full time on location at a job now, so I've had to change around how I do things. I
Yeah.
don't post as much per week as I do. I rely more on photos than I had in a while. And sometimes my videos are just me talking to the camera, quick, easy stuff. And I must admit, for a bit, it 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 felt kind of lazy on my part. It felt like I wasn't giving the effort, but I'm trying to just look at it as sort of the evolution, making do with my situation and just still trying to do my best and just keep going at it. And it's an evolution.
Yeah.
It may not be quite the same as it once was, but I mean, once in a while, I'm still going to try to make a video that takes a bit more time and
Mhm.
energy. Because once in a while you do that, you know, I guess it makes it more special, if you
Right.
as opposed to posting a crazy video every day.
Well, I mean, they take time. I've done one here and there, on another page of mine. It is time consuming.
Yeah. And a lot of my videos are me talking to the camera, starting with hello my friends, this is Vinylbenjy.
Mhm.
But once in a while, I'll do something that's different. One of the videos that's pinned to my profile right now, it was a trending sound, and I think the original video or the video that I saw anyway was a guy putting down his electric guitar and then picking up the acoustic, and suddenly he shoots up into space. And I use that sound, and I just think similar, but I made it. I took off from my turntable a 200 milligram record of some kind,
Mhm.
and then I took a 45, and then I shoot up into. And that video did really, really well. And
That's pretty
it took,
cool.
yeah, and that took some time. Not a terrible amount of time, but obviously it doesn't look realistic. But it's it was. look, I don't have as much time to do stuff like that anymore. I mean, the
Right.
last video I did was when I was talking about playing my record outside. I just took the video selfie mode like this,
Yep.
edited it right on my phone, and then put it up.
Yep.
But I do like the idea of having a bit more of that sort of cozier, not as uh polished video because people like that kind of intimate thing once in a while.
Right.
Just like I
Well,
said, I'm gonna keep evolving with my situation, and but uh but Vinylbenjy is not going anywhere. It's gonna be a little different, I suppose, but it's not gonna cease to exist necessarily because I don't want it to.
yeah. Well, I mean, like you said, you got to keep it fun. I like to, you mentioned you keep it genuine, what you want to post.
Yeah,
If you're working, might have to be different, but still you. So that's awesome.
and I don't want it stopping me because it's easy when it's just when at least for me it's easier when it's yourself.
Yeah.
Just you don't have a boss to go to.
Right.
Just think, what do I want to share with people today,
Mhm.
and that's that.
Well, I mentioned when we were DMing a little bit about like, were there any records that you want to show?
Oh my God, yeah.
Any favorites of your collection you want to take some time to highlight?
Oh yeah, I got plenty. I I took a bunch of random ones that I thought I might enjoy sharing. Got plenty.
Nice.
Got some valuable ones, not as valuable ones, just ones that I enjoy. Let's see. This is my British pressing of Pet Sounds in fake stereo, and considering there's the flipbacks too. That's another thing. I do genuinely like these flipbacks for some reason. I can't explain why.
No, I
The
mean
way
they're
records were made in the 60s.
yeah.
This is a British pressing of Pet Sounds, fake stereo. And despite the fake stereo, it actually still sounds pretty good. It's in great condition to begin with. But oddly enough, the fake stereo of the delay coming from each channel doesn't bother me that much. I thought it would. Doesn't.
That's pretty cool.
You've copied. Uh, Gotta pick and choose. I have plenty here. Holland by the Beach Boys. This is my very special German pressing of Holland that was
Oh,
accidentally pressed
nice.
with the wrong song.
Oh,
Instead
really?
of Sail on Sailor, it got a song called We Got Love.
And so on the record itself, it's got the wrong song on. Oh,
Right? Yep.
interesting.
It's this particular copy of or pressing of this album is not easily available online. It's not there aren't always copies for sale. And I remember one night I was having a hard time sleeping and I just randomly went to eBay and I searched. I was like, oh, maybe I'll search for this now. And there it was.
Hmm.
And you'd think I would have just ordered it right there and then from my bed in the dark. No, I went to bed. But thankfully when
I
I
just
woke up it was still there. So when I woke up, I ordered
okay.
it. Yeah, thankfully no one else was looking for it, I guess. These are my two original copies of Working Man's Dead and American Beauty by the Grateful Dead. I've only become a Grateful Dead fan, a Deadhead in the last year, beginning of last year, beginning of 2024, I started to really get into them finally. And since then, I've got a lot of Grateful Dead records,
Yeah. They're a
but
band I've been meaning to get in because I know there's very passionate fans of the Grateful Dead. I mean, they have a whole nickname, but I've been so absorbed in Beatles and Dylan and all that. They've just never been a band I've really sat down and tried to listen to a whole lot. So I'm trying to get a little bit more into them.
well, when the time is right, it'll happen, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Look, if I had a choice, I maybe would have done it sooner, but if it happens, it happens. Anyway,
Yeah.
these copies of these two legendary albums of theirs, these are standard American pressings, but these were my uncle's. So thankfully I
Okay,
had these to
cool.
begin with.
Nice.
And I almost considered giving them to this other friend of mine who's a big Deadhead because at the time I was in, I said, I'm probably not going to listen to these, enjoy them. Thankfully, I didn't.
Yeah.
This is my original US copy of Odyssey and Oracle by the Zombies. This was
Oh,
also
nice.
these also go for a couple $100 nowadays. Thankfully, I didn't have to pay a thing for it, but
Hmm,
the nice
even better.
sounding record. I would love to get a British pressing one day in original, but those are even rarer. So I doubt I'll ever be able to afford that. It's a fantastic album, one of the coolest psychedelic records of the 60s, and just incredible music. I've got plenty. Where do I may have to pick and choose, and I don't want to take the whole the time. Let's see.
Hmm.
Well, let's say this one. I may post a lot about the legendary artists, but I do try to make room in my collection for smaller, less well-known artists. For example, I don't know if you're familiar from social media with Fishboy,
Mm-mm.
Eric Michener, aka Fishboy.
Okay.
All of his albums are concept albums. This is the most recent one. It's called Waits Giving, and it's really, really great. It's about a time capsule somewhere, I guess, in Denton, Texas. I think because that's where he's from, and there's no time to open it. It just says wait. I guess you never open it, and it's all about that and this new holiday that forms as a result of it. It's just some incredible stuff on here, and Eric has become an incredible content creator. He has amazing videos on his Instagram and TikTok, and I highly recommend you check him out for
Yeah, I have
that
to
too.
check it out.
I do have somewhere. Wait, is it right here? Speaking of which, my friends at Children of Minerva just put out an album too. They have maybe less than 50 copies left. So I'll do a shameless promotion. Is it here? Where is it? Okay, I don't have them within arm's reach, but Children of Minerva, they did a soundtrack to this upcoming short film. I don't know, it's a short film or upcoming film called crap, I forgot what it's called. I forgot what it's called. But I got their record recently. It's incredible. I mean, I'm
Nice.
biased because these people are my friends, but there's nothing I really enjoy doing more than supporting people like that.
Yeah, especially,
And
up and coming artists.
posts about these lesser known artists don't always do as well. Actually, I don't think they ever do as well as posts about the Beatles. But I don't care.
Yeah. No,
I don't care
I
one
mean, you
bit.
should. Yeah.
I love hyping up these people. Uh, I try to do it when I can within
Yeah.
reason. Let's see what else I got. Let's see my original UK copy of the Best of George Harrison. This one sounds fantastic. It's a
Oh,
fantastic sound.
nice. That's cool.
Not necessarily the best compilation ever put out by an artist, but it's a great sounding record. And George Harrison by the car is very cool.
Yeah, no, I've actually never seen that cover. That's neat.
Yeah, the American cover was way different. This one's better. Here's a cool story. Now, one of the great things that happened as a result of Vinylbenjy uh, has been the connections I've made with people. Not just vinyl community, but even people who are might be well known, or the opportunity, or me being shared by some of my favorites. I mean, I already mentioned I was shared by the Beatles, but I've had videos of mine reposted by the Beach Boys and the Grateful Dead as well.
Oh, nice. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's incredible. But one of the things that happened was I bought this McCartney record at a record fair one day. It was I got it for decently cheaper than they go for online. It's called Twin Freaks, and it's Paul with this producer slash DJ named Roy Kerr, aka the Freelance Hellraiser. And I never would have thought to find this on vinyl, but it was right there, and I got it. I did a post about it sometime later. Roy followed me, and we've connected, we've chatted a bunch, and this guy who did a whole album and tour with Paul McCartney, I chat with him
That's awesome.
in the memes and stuff. And he's a really nice guy. It's amazing what could happen. The
Yeah.
connections I've made as a result of me just share my passion and be myself. It's been incredible.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome. I never would have thought.
I never take any of the stuff for granted. I always try to
Mm.
remain thankful for the wonderful things that have come my way and
Right.
the friends I've made. And I try to stay humble and grounded, and I just try to continue to be thankful and continue to love what I do.
Yeah. That's a great attitude to have about it.
And that being said, I guess showing off the super valuable records of my collection could be cocky sometimes because I have some ones that cost a pretty penny. I just got this at Beatles Fest a few months ago. Memory Almost Full by Paul McCartney on vinyl. These go for a few hundred at least. I finally got a
Wow.
copy for myself.
That's
I
cool.
love this album. This is one of the earliest McCartney. This is one of the first McCartney albums I really loved because when I was starting to get into McCartney as a solo artist, this was, I guess, the new album at the time.
Hmm.
But this is an album I really enjoyed, and having it on vinyl finally, it was just cool. I mean, going to Beatles Fest, my wallet was wide open. I knew I
Right.
wasn't going to be financially responsible. And here's a couple others. These two go together, Songs of Leonard Cohen and Bookends by Simon and Garfunkel.
Mm.
These are original mono pressings. of the mono mix, and these mono mixes of these albums are not available for streaming and probably will never be. I don't hope I mean hopefully one day. This is an original mono US pressing of Bookends. These
Sweet.
goes for a bit. I finally got one online, and same with this one. The original US mono of Songs of Leonard Cohen, so hard to find online. I barely see one. Thankfully, the UK pressings have the true mono mix, and those are available. So I got this. And these are albums I love. I mean, got a bunch of Jewish guys right here. I'm Jewish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Leonard Cohen, Simon Garfunkel. I was actually in the same college fraternity as Simon Garfunkel. Hey,
Oh,
Pi.
nice. That's a really cool
Obviously, we
connection.
weren't in the fraternity at the same time, nor
No.
were we in the same chapter, but
Right.
yeah, they're my bros, and they all happen to be favorites of mine.
Hmm.
And these albums just beautiful, beautiful tunes by some of the greatest songwriters of all time. Right in the heart of the 60s, 67, 68,
Yeah.
just incredible.
Amazing time for music.
Speaking of being Jewish, one thing I don't share much about on Vinylbenjy, obviously vinyl was my big passion, but another big passion of mine is Judaism. I consider myself to be a pretty observant Jew. I celebrate Shabbat every week. I keep kosher. Uh, so I do enjoy getting the occasional Israeli pressing of an album. And I used to live in Israel actually, and I did buy some
Oh.
records there. This one I bought online though. This is an original Israeli pressing of Abbey Road, and it's
Oh my
Flipbacks.
gosh. Wow.
Flipbacks.
That's
It's not in
cool.
the best shape, but it's so cool to have. And here's the amazing thing about Israeli pressings from the 60s, at least for the Beatles. They often use the same cuttings as the British pressings. So this
Hmm.
has the -2-1 that most nerdy Beatle fans know to look for in a British copy of Abbey Road.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's really neat. I had no idea.
Yep. I'll tell you a story actually. I didn't bring it out to show. It's still on my shelf over there. I could show you if I wanted to, but I have this Israeli pressing of Magical Mystery Tour. I remember when I
Oh.
first got it, I bought it on Facebook from a group on Facebook. I remember when it came and I bought it, of course, because it's from my home country, my people, a place I love so much. But I remember listening to it the first time, and I remember thinking how incredible it sounded. I don't consider myself a super audiophile. I mean, it's not like I can tell the little bits,
Right.
but I remember thinking, wow, this copy sounds really good. Even I was able to notice how good it sounded. And then I guess I started getting into the videos by Parlogram, Andrew from Parlogram. Parlogram,
Hmm.
originally called Parlogram Auctions. He does all these historical cool videos about Beatles and Beatles records. And I think he's made a lot of people aware about some of the best Beatles album pressings. So as a result of him, I wanted to get a German Magical Mystery Tour from the early 70s, all true stereo. And eventually I did get that one. But for a while, I didn't actually need to because at some point I actually realized I looked at that copy, that Israeli copy, Magical Mystery Tour. It uses the same cutting as the German one, which
Oh.
is, which, hey, no wonder why it sounds so good. Ultimately, I got a German one too because at one point I accidentally dropped the disc of the Israeli copy onto the corner of my turntable and got some pretty
Oof.
big scratches on it. It still plays,
Yeah.
but it was still crazy. I used that as an excuse to finally buy a German copy at some point. Still have both.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, some copies from other countries, well, at least European countries, might often have the same cuttings as the legendary British pressings. So
That's
they
really
ain't
nice.
so bad.
I'm glad I had you, learning a whole lot already. This is awesome.
Yeah. Now, I will say, speaking of Israel, I guess I'll bring this book back. This is the most recent album I bought. I bought it on Thursday. I was off from work and I went record shopping, and I went to Infinity in Massapequa Park on the Lounge. It's a frequent place I go to get records. And one of the new records they had, well, it wasn't new, it was newly acquired. It was this Israeli album by a group called the Plantina, or as we would say, Ha Platina. And I had never heard of this group or this record, but the price they described it as this Israeli jazz funk, and I bought it because why not? And I actually really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. Kind of reminded me of Anchorman, because you know how Ron Burgundy in that movie would play his flute, and that would be the lead instrument in this
Right,
cool
right.
smooth stuff. Well, the main instrument on this album is flute too,
Hmm.
and
That's pretty
it
cool.
was nice vibes.
Yeah.
I listened to this outside the other day, and it was great.
Hmm. It's impressive.
Instrumental jazz with flute.
Yeah.
Yep. I have two more in this pile, but if you want me to show more, I can. I could go all day. These are, of course, I still love my British pressings, and the Beatles will always be my favorite. So, these are the two more recent ones I got. This is a UK export pressing of Hey Jude, the American compilation.
Oh,
It sounds
cool.
absolutely phenomenal. I got this at another one of my favorite local record stores, Mr. Cheapo's. That was the first record store I ever went to, actually, at the very beginning. And a friend of mine who's now the manager, his name is Mick. Oh, Mick, this same Mick is also he's one of the guys in Children of Minerva. I
Okay.
mentioned they're around before, but that's besides the point. I walked into the store that day and Mick was there. And Mick doesn't even say hi. He says, Benji, we have these records you gotta buy right now. And he shows me this British export pressing of Hey Jude, as well as the UK pressing of Wild Honey by the Beach Boys. And that was the first thing he said to me. And of course, I listened to, I just grabbed them and I hugged them with dear life. And this record sounds amazing. This is another pressing that I kind of found out from Andrew from Program. And, I think it's fair to say that he caused the value of some of these various Beatles pressings to rise as a result of his videos. I don't know if they don't think that was his intention necessarily,
Yeah.
but
But
it was bad. And I did get this not too long ago either. My original mono of with all putbacks.
oh,
It's
sweet.
not the very, very first pressing with the alternate mix of Tomorrow Never Knows, but it's still a beautiful copy.
No, that's
Son of a
pretty.
story.
I like that a lot.
It's yeah. I got so many records. I've I, I just love talking about.
Yeah, no, that's
I got plenty of others. I do
I
have some
mean,
45s. I could tell you about two actually, if you want. If you have time for a few more of that, then we can go on to more questions and stuff.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, so let's see. I took out these 45s. I bought this one at the Fest for Beatles fans, not this past year, but last year. It's the original 1963 Beatles Fan Club Christmas record. Had always wanted one of these. This is a British one. And it was a little cheaper than I might have gone for because whoever owned it had her name on it.
Oh,
Ellen Barrier or something, Barres, I don't know. But then I got another name on it. I got it signed by Frida Kelly, the original Beatles fan club secretary, because on this Christmas record, she gets a shout out.
oh,
George
really?
Harrison, yeah, she gets a shout out on this. So it felt very appropriate to have her sign it, Frida Kelly.
Okay, wow. And I
So,
love I love the history behind that.
yeah, it's so fucking cool. I don't know what to say. This one I got recently. This is a very special Vert Beach Boys single that really didn't get a wide release. I think it was released exclusively in Utah in Salt Lake City because on their album, the Beach Boys album, Summer Days and Summer Nights, they had a song called Salt Lake City. So I guess they made a special single for that city. It has Salt Lake City on one side and another song called Amusement Park USA on the other. And I'd known about this single for a while, but it was also always very expensive. So I was always hoping one day would find it. And I did go on Discogs not terribly long ago. This was from a month or two ago. This was a very beat up copy, but it was only $60, so I knew I had to snag it.
Yeah.
Came with the original sleeve too. And yeah, as a huge Beach Boys fan, I was so excited to have this one.
No, that's awesome.
And I
Cool
posted about
find.
it and everything. It's not, records like this are not exactly going to get me viral. This is a record for really diehard fans,
Hmm.
but it was still fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I,
Well,
I try
especially,
I
like if
try
you're
to
a
make
huge fan of it. I mean,
I try to make content that people will enjoy, but I also try to cater to more niche audiences.
yeah,
Kansas Vinylbenjy is a very it's a I'm an influencer of a very niche crowd. I'm not
right.
expecting to be super duper big.
Hmm.
I mean, for the vinyl community, 13,000 is quite a good number of followers to
That's
have.
pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't expect to be super, super huge, but I've made some incredible progress, and I'm hoping to continue growing. And of course, that being said, I still want to share about what I feel like sharing about.
Right, exactly.
That's what makes it fun. And I have a couple more here. This is the Grateful Dead recently announced. I think it just came out, or if not, it's about to. The 60th anniversary box set of a whole bunch of live albums from
Mm.
1969 to 1994, 1995. They did one for their 50th anniversary. I don't have it, but it did come with a limited edition single, and it had on one side the very first song they recorded as a band in the studio. And back then they were called the Emergency Crew. And it's a song that they did put out on their album Anthem of the Sun called Caution Do Not Stop on Tracks. And that's on one side, the earliest. On the other side is the very last song from their very last concert,
Oh wow.
which was Box of Rain. And that's on these two sides. Thankfully, someone on Discogs was selling just the single, and I got it. I didn't need all the CDs. I didn't need the whole box. I just wanted the record.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all right, I got these are more recent ones I got. I'm almost done, I promise. I went to this little record fair in Brooklyn not so very long ago, and there wasn't much that caught my attention besides these two Bob Dylan singles.
Oh,
I want you,
got this.
I want you back with what was it? What was the B side of this one? I forgot. Oh, just like Tom Thumb's Blues, the live
Mm.
version. And it comes with the picture sleeve. This was 15 bucks. Then I got a promo 45, a blown in the wind, backed with don't think twice, that's all right. And this was
Oh,
35.
sweet. That's awesome.
And I couldn't resist. And the crazy part was I found out later that these go for hundreds too. So, if I knew that, I would have said to the guy, "Are you sure you want to sell for that little? I'm willing to pay a little bit more."
Right.
But yeah, I'm really excited to have these in my collection.
Do you have, and I can't remember exactly what year, I think it was the late 80s or maybe early, I can't remember exactly when, but I know like Bob Dylan and the Grateful Dead did a concert together and there's like an
So I do have
album.
Dylan the Dead. That was one of the more
Okay.
recent ones I got. And for most records I really love, I'm gonna want to get an original or vintage pressing. But for that one, I decided to actually get a more recent pressing on blue and red
Hmm.
tie-dye splatter, not splatter, swirl
I've
vinyl.
never
That's
I've never listened to it. I've heard mixed I've only read the Wikipedia article. I've heard mixed things about it that's not because I looked at the set list from it, I'm like, Dylan, what do you like what's on? And I'm like, oh,
I will
all
tell
right.
you, I remember when I finally got to listen to the album, I was driving home from work or something. Didn't know what to expect because I read those reviews like you did, but I remember thinking it's not that terrible. I didn't think it was that terrible. And I
Okay.
messaged this other friend of mine who's a huge Deadhead like myself, but he's been a Deadhead way longer. My friend Dan, B-Sides Live. Um, and I told him, I said, Dan, this is not terrible. I don't know why it got such negative reviews. I kind of like it. Look, I don't understand critics.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Uh,
never know. I mean, there are some
I
albums
enjoyed
people
it.
hate and you're like, you know,
I enjoyed that's all that matters. And the
right.
pressing is beautiful. The blue and red splatter is very nice. The photo I took when I got it and I put up on Vinylbenjy that day at work, they were doing new employee photos. So I was that morning I was wearing a suit. I just took the photo in the suit.
Nice.
Yeah,
Very
it's up
fancy.
that much.
Well, I got as we're this has been awesome, and I know you apologize for showing so much, but it's honestly really cool to see, all these different vinyls and what you got. I think that's a cool thing that you offer to people. Like I know you said, oh, it's like it could come off as showing off, but I don't think it does. I think it's cool to some
Oh,
people will never get to own these vinyls. I used to work at a comic book store, and I would have like we'd come in and we'd have like the first appearance of Iron Man, and I could never afford that, but it'd be cool to see it. So like I think it's cool that you get to, show people these things.
yeah, there's nothing like, sometimes I mean, not something, it just feels so cool to own these incredible copies of records. It's something I
And
don't necessarily
pieces
get
of
tired of.
history.
Now, we'll ask you. I know you were getting ready to wrap up. I have a question for you. What is the rarest comic book you own, or some of them?
My rarest comic book is probably it's Batman 171. It's the first Silver Age appearance of the Riddler. They divide it up in different so Golden Age is like when Batman first appeared and like Superman late 30s, and that goes to about 1954. Then Silver Age is 54 to 70. So that's probably one of my rarest comics. I've got this is a kind of a cool cover. My room is so disorganized right now, but
Dude, same. It's okay.
this cool Neil
We're
Adams cover. It's
oh,
like kind of
great
an
and
iconic.
everything. I mean, don't
Yeah,
you
so
wish you
this,
could open up and read it?
I know that's what we sell comics, and so I'll have like sometimes kids will be like, "Oh, mom, I want that one." It's great, and it's like you need to just buy yourself a raw copy, kid, because you're just gonna want to crack it open and you know.
I do have records I should get probably great. I have a Second State Butcher cover, Beatles yesterday and today. I mean, I have that kind of still on my shelf with all the other records, but
Yeah.
perhaps getting it graded wouldn't be such a terrible idea.
Well, one thing, actually, two more things I wanted to ask you real quick before we end up having to go. And this has been awesome. And anytime you want to come on and just yap about vinyls, I'm all on
Oh,
board.
I'm game, please. I'd love to be back on your
I've actually
podcast.
been thinking about this. I guess some behind the scenes. I have my own Instagram account. I'm trying to think like what do I want to do with it. And I'm a teacher. I've been thinking about like doing short videos about like picking a song or an artist and be like, this is the history connection between this song and this is what the song meant at the time, or this is the context of it.
Well,
Um,
the one thing I'd recommend you do is definitely continue to check out other people
mhm.
who are like you, who make content that you might want to make, get inspiration, good ideas. I definitely have some names of people I'd recommend you check out. Two of my very good online friends, one being Giggins, the other being Hypnotic Fred. They definitely make history type videos that you might want to check out and maybe you'll get inspiration from them.
Sweet.
That's a good start. And I'm sure I can think of others and I can tell you another time.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I want to ask, as a Beatles fan, who is your, I'm not gonna say favorite Beatle. I'm gonna ask who is like of the solo careers, do you have a solo career that you gravitate more than others? I like all of them, but is there one that you know, resonate with more?
I appreciate that you asked that question in a specific way you did because my favorite Beatle is George as a person, but when it comes to solo careers, no doubt Paul.
Gotcha.
And that is something I have distinguished between before.
Hmm.
Yeah, Paul just had the most music, most variety, and just incredibly talented. And yeah, I enjoy listening to Paul's music.
You definitely have, I mean, you know, between, you know, solo work and Wings as well. I mean, you know, Wings post Beatles is still a band, but I mean, it's very much Paul's band. And I mean, he's been very prolific. And so there's a lot to enjoy from Paul.
And to
Um,
me, Paul is the easiest Beatle to impersonate. Well, back when I was in that band, the Beatles,
like,
John and
yeah,
I, we did a lot of songs together. We would sit in a girlfriend's house in the attic. There'd be a piano there. I think we wrote I Want to Hold Your Hand. Yeah. Anyway, yesterday came to me in a dream, you know.
it's funny
Yeah,
looking at
I
interviews. That's a good one. It's funny
thanks.
looking at interviews he does where he's just like, he'll tell a story that you've heard him say a billion times,
Billion
but I mean, still,
times.
you know, it's
I
like,
came across a video compilation recently. Someone compiled a whole bunch of times when Paul told the story about yesterday and Let It Be about how those songs both came to him in a dream.
right.
It did get boring after a while, but it was still a funny concept of a video.
Right.
He's mastered that story. And I must admit, me telling the story about how I got my first record, that's a story I've kind of mastered the details too.
Right.
Sometimes
Well,
try to
also we got
have
to,
one little bit of information that I forgot about all these years will randomly pop up in my brain, but sadly it hasn't. I've mastered the story at this point.
when we really, I mean, we got to enjoy, like, I'll listen to him say anything, honestly, because we got to enjoy these guys while they're still around. And, you know, I'm actually, Wednesday, I'm seeing Ringo. He's going to be
Lucky
in town. So
missed
I'm
him.
excited to see him. I hope Paul tours again here in the US. I'm sure in the next, maybe in the next few years, we'll see. I'm seeing Dylan in July. So you got to, you know, cherish these people while they're around because my favorite Beatle is George, like you, and I think he's probably my favorite solo artist. I try to contextualize, you know, he had a limited, you know, has was not around as long as Paul, but I really like the vibes of his solo work and a lot of the messaging you see in his solo work. So
George was definitely he could write songs of various types. I mean, and Paul too, but I think about George Harrison. You think about songs like My Sweet Lord, Isn't
mhm,
It Pity, and I'll Have You Any Time, and those deep, incredible lyrics, Dylan inspired. And then there's a song called Cracker Box Palace, which starts with I was so young when I was born.
right, but
Incredible variety,
right,
incredible diverseness. That's a word.
exactly. Um, well, as we wrap up, Ian, this has been awesome. I like I said, anytime I want to come back on, you know, I'd love to, you know, just reach out and yap some more.
Dude, I'd
What
love to yap.
advice?
Yeah, I'd love to be back on again. I always love yapping, and I want to hear you
Yes.
yap a bit more about your comic books. I
Yeah,
don't
that'd
know
be
much
fun.
about comic books, but you heard me nerd out. I kind of want to hear you nerd out a bit too.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, it's annoying because there are similar. I mean, there are, you know, like vinyls. There's reissues. There's certain, you know, eras that are more significant than others. So it's
I'm
cool.
sure there are plenty of people who have more than one copy of the same comic.
Oh, oh yeah, for sure.
Like I'm
Um,
sure, like I'm sure there are crazy comic book fans who spent loads of money on Superman #1 and got the various reissues over the years, and they could tell you about the texture of the pages and the quality of the ink,
Oh
and
yeah, for
oh,
sure.
this pressing's better than this pressing. I get it. I
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Everyone's got their niche. And
100%.
well, what would you, if you have someone that just want to get into vinyl collecting, I guess, what would you recommend to them to kind of, let's say they've never bought a vinyl before. What would you say to them? Where do they start?
I'd say to start with the artist they love the most,
Mhm.
because what makes a great record collection is a record collection that reflects who you are and what you love.
Right.
I have a lot of great, cool, valuable records in my collection, but uh, would that person be happy with those records? They got to just find what they want, what they love,
Right.
and because that's what makes an incredible record collection, one that you love.
Yeah. And to kind of connect back to comics like we were just doing is like I've asked this question before to comic book dealers and all that, what do you tell someone who's just getting into stuff? And it's the same message I think is like buy what you like. You know, to me it wouldn't make a lot of sense for me to buy a lot of heavy metal because I'm not into that.
Yeah, same
I'm
here.
sure there's a lot of great albums out there, but it's just not my thing. So you got to buy what you like, you
Yeah,
know?
I do tend to really enjoy getting rare records. Guilty as charged,
Yeah.
but look, there's also nothing wrong with getting something cheaper, going to the dollar bin. Granted, I don't
Yeah.
know that. I'm pretty particular with my tastes, but it is a fun opportunity as well
This is
excuse
kind
me,
of a
to just kind of explore a little bit.
yeah.
I don't do that as much, but I encourage other people to do it.
Well, and sometimes the nice gateway drug is like those best of albums,
Oh, 100%.
because they can like, yeah, they're not the original, but like, let's like, I've got the best of Dylan, and they're like, oh, this song is on here. I want to get the album where that's originally from, or like,
100%. I mean, I started my three favorite bands now. I started with those bands with compilations like Beatles. Beatles one came out when I was 5, and that was an early album for me. Beach Boys, the greatest hits. Well, I mean, they have a lot of greatest hits, the Beach Boys, but these ones from the early 2000s as well, with the Beach Boys greatest hits volume 1 and 2, and that's what got me into the Beach Boys. And Grateful Dead. I listened to the Greatest Town with the yellow cover. I forgot which one that's called, but that's what got me into these bands. And greatest hits are definitely an incredible way to start.
yeah.
I mean, that's
And
how I do it too if I want to get into an artist.
this is kind of embarrassing. I remember when I was first getting into the Beatles, like when I first, I've always liked the Beatles, as far as I've been alive. Like when I started getting a little bit more into them, I bought the one album on iTunes. And I remember like if someone would ask me like, "What's your favorite album?" I'd say the one album, and I like looking back, I'm like, "Oh, that's not really an it's an album, but it's not." Like now,
I
if you
know.
ask me, I'd say Sergeant Pepper or Revolver or something like that. But like I didn't realize that that's a compilation album. That's not like
I
a
I know some people might give you a look, and there are definitely every fan group, every fandom, every community has its fair share of gatekeepers and stuff
Mhm.
like that. But look, that's a lot to be your favorite. I
Yeah,
mean, look, it's a great one. It has all their best stuff.
it's all the best
What's
ones.
bad
Well,
about that? It's a lot to be your favorite.
that's to, and I keep on saying we're gonna wrap up here, but this is something that I think is good to end on. Is like this is something Skylar and I talked about too. Is like don't, and you don't do this, but I think there are people in not even really in the community. I think there's older people that tend to do this. It's like just don't be gatekeepy. Like ask people for help if you want to get into something, or like don't be ashamed if your favorite song by the Beatles is "Hey Jude." Cool. That's I know that's like the stereotypical Beatles song, but if you love that song, there's no, and you don't know obscure song, insert here, you can learn about that song. I mean, I'm a Dylan fan. Oh my gosh. Dylan is so you can get so deep in the weeds on Dylan with outtakes and bootlegs and all this stuff. And fortunately, a lot of the Dylan people in the community are very welcoming and very nice. But just, be that for other people. If someone has a question, wants to get into vinyl, ask away. Like I asked you about, hey, can you help me with logging my vinyls? And we hadn't talked before, and you said, sure, I'll answer your question.
Yeah, I tell people out if someone asks me a question, I'll try my best to answer it. But I will say, I don't know everything. I sometimes
Yeah,
need help. Look, I may have
exactly.
been collecting for about 16 years, but doesn't mean I'm a total expert. I just happen to be really passionate about it. And I do know a thing or two. But look, if I don't know something, I'm not afraid to either look on Google or ask a friend. I have plenty
Right.
of friends who I know way more than I do. Some
Yeah.
of them I already mentioned this in this show. My friend Hypnotic Fred, he's a huge expert. Mick McCantone, who is also from Children of Minerva, and he's the manager of Cheapos. You know, he's a way longer collector than I am, and he definitely knows. I have friends, and I know people who I know I can go to if I need help. I'm not afraid to admit that. I'm not ashamed at
Yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah,
Because a collection or passion, it's not. I feel like it must stop being fun, and if you know it all.
yeah, exactly. That's part of what gets me buying more. I buy also a lot of books to learn about the history behind stuff and how songs came to be and what happened to artists. And so the more there is to learn, the more fun it is, you know?
You gotta never stop learning. It keeps it fun, it keeps it exciting, keeps you curious, and you never know what's out there for you to explore.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a slogan that we've adopted here at Chasing Collectibles is to, keep chasing, keep going after whatever is you like, and I'm sure you'll keep on finding new and cool vinyls and you'll keep on sharing them on Vinylbenjy, and I'll definitely be still following and looking forward to seeing what you share next. And so I just really want to thank you again for making the time to come on the show today. It's been
Dude,
a blast.
thank you so much for having me, and I'm gonna make sure I take time to pay closer attention to what you got, and I'm really excited to be on your show again. Hopefully, I want to hear more
Yeah,
about your nerdiness in comics, Tyler. And the beautiful phrase you have there. Maybe my phrase has nothing to do with that. I just say hello, my friends. This is Vinylbenjy. It's
yeah,
just a welcoming way to start my videos. Anyway, thank you so much for having me. I
yeah.
really enjoyed it. I hope we get to chat again soon and continue to nerd out with each other about vinyl and comics and everything.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Thanks again.
My pleasure.
All right, bye.
Yay, comics!